Good evening. If you would please, silence your cell phones and be advised these proceedings are being recorded. For those of you physically present in the council chambers, welcome to you. If you desire to address the City Council during the meeting, please complete a request to speak form. They are available at the front entrance, and you will present it to the City Clerk so that speakers can be called upon at the appropriate time. Those participating via Zoom will actually have an opportunity to speak, and they will be called on at the appropriate time as well. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes speaking time. This time I will call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Grand Terrace, August 9th, 2022. We will be closing tonight in memory of San Bernardino County Assessor, Recorder, Clerk Bob Dutton. And I do have a nice little background to read on him, but I think I'll hold that for my reports or my communication time. At this time, our invocation will be offered by Dr. Fred Adams of the Rock Church and World Outreach Center. Followed by that, Councilmember Doug Wilson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you'll agree with me, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the city of Grand Terrace and for its efforts to move forward in a collaborative unity of trust and grace and mercy and love for the people of the city of Grand Terrace. So, Holy Spirit, we invite your presence here today, and we ask that you grant wisdom and guidance to our mayor and each member of the council for the decisions that will be made here today in this chamber. In Jesus' name we pray, and everyone in agreement said, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Wilson.
I am here.
Councilmember Robles.
Present.
Mayor McNabo.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Hussey is absent. Madam Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to say hello to Scott Ward, who's the representative for our supervisor, Don Rath. Thank you for joining us this evening. My pleasure. Do we have any reordering of additions to or removal of items from the agenda tonight?
Yes, we'd like to add 2 presentations, one for our new, introduce our new employees, and secondly, a presentation for Bob Dutton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, we will move to our special presentations. Shall we do new employees first?
But, let's do that and get them out of here, right? So we're not paying them overtime.
Well, they can stay and watch the Bob Dutton video.
So we'll bring Michelle Fuentes up, Desi Lara, and Fabian Rodriguez. Oh, sorry. And if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Michelle Fuentes, and a little background about myself. I actually worked at the Janet Goski Foundation and Senior Center for over 8 years. I started there as the executive assistant and was promoted to associate director. Prior to that, I worked at Southland Title for 10 years, and I started there as a sales assistant and then went to executive assistant, HR assistant. I'm really excited for this new journey, and I'd like to express that I'm grateful for this opportunity to work at the City of Grand Terrace, and it's really great to meet you guys.
It's wonderful to have you here. Did I miss what it is you will be doing for us?
I'm sorry, he said senior management analyst.
Very nice.
She'll be doing our HR, human resources.
Yes, and I'd like to introduce our maintenance workers. This is Fabian Rodriguez.
Hello, good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Fabian Rodriguez. I come from the city of Yucaipa. I was recently working public works over there as well, but I received this amazing opportunity to come work for the city of Grand Terrace, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Right, welcome.
Hello, Mayor and council members. I'm also one of the new general maintenance workers for the city of Grand Terrace. My name is Desi Laura. Prior to this job, I was working at In-N-Out, so this is my first time doing general maintenance work, but I'm excited for what I can learn and what I can bring. I'm a resident here in Grand Terrace, so I'm looking forward to taking care of my city and helping the way I can. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful, welcome. So welcome Ms. Fuentes, Mr. Rodriguez, and Mr. Laura. We look forward to working with you.
And we have a presentation on the monitor for Bob Dutton.
Bob Dutton, who was our assessor, used to make historical videos, and I found the one he made on Grand Terrace, so I thought that might be a nice thing to show. Well, thank you. That was a nice piece about our history. Wonderful to see that and to think about our assessor and how he created these wonderfully informative videos about our county. All right, so we'll move on to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. However, any council member, staff member, or citizen may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. And before we move forward with any motion, I have something that I will read. But before I do that, I'm going to ask if there are any items to be removed. Okay. Seeing none, I will make the statement. So before we move forward with a motion, pursuant to Government Code Sections 54953C3 and 3511.1, the legislative body is required to orally report a summary of recommendations for final action on salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive. So accordingly, before the City Council this evening, as part of Agenda Item C6, is a recommendation to approve the following salary and benefit packages as follows. The city manager's salary has been increased by 2%, beginning with fiscal year 2022-2023, for a total annual salary of $215,424. All right, so now I will ask if there is a motion for the consent calendar.
Yeah, I'll move the consent calendar, Mayor.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Allen and a second by Councilmember Doug Wilson. Please vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, do we have any requests to speak for items not on the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. We have no public hearings, we have no unfinished business, so we will move into our new business. First of which, item 15 on the agenda is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, amending section 5.42.170, which is containers located for collection of chapter 5.42, integrated waste management, of Title V, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code to identify locations for placements of residential waste containers for pickup by waste haulers. Mr. City Manager Conrad Bolowich.
Thank you very much. And sorry to be so specific on the exact piece of that, but we really are only changing proposing to change a very, very small portion of the code. We have a handful of residents who are creative in where they place their trash cans. Rather, you would assume you'd put them in front of your house for easiest pickup. For whatever reason, we have these residents who place the cans across the street, around the corner, by the neighbor's house, and on itself is probably no big deal, but what happens with that is the trucks have a route that they run, and they plan to run this route in front of the homes, and it's requiring the trash trucks to take detours, to double back on themselves, and to really be fairly inefficient in those places where that happens. So we're asking that we change the ordinance that the trash cans either be placed in the alley behind the house or in front of the house so that we can run our routes and limit damage to our streets, be more efficient, and limit greenhouse gases. Thank you.
All right. Questions for staff? All right. When you say in front of the house, it occurs to me that some people's homes have, especially those on the corner, will have their front door on one side of the street, which is probably their address, but their garage is located on the other street, and that's easier for them to roll their waste containers down their driveway to put them essentially in front of their house, but not at the front facing part of their house. And so in the ordinance, would they have to move it around to the front door?
Good question. We would like to see it on the driveway side. It's convenient, and that's where the path typically runs. So we can incorporate that. Will we need to reintroduce this, or we can take that for a second reading with that minor modification.
Mayor, if we have two options. One, we can bring it back, obviously. Option two is if we can identify the language and incorporate it tonight and read it into the record, then we could conduct the first reading this evening. So what I would suggest, if the mayor and council are agreeable, maybe we take like a 5-minute recess to kind of draft that language and incorporate it in.
All right. Is that agreeable to my colleagues?
Yeah, we got the time.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, great. So we'll take just a 5-minute recess then.
Okay.
Hold on.
Do you want to take further questions first? Because,
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
Any further questions? Councilmember Allen.
Do we not have anything in place right now that has that stipulation or that requirement? Is that why?
It says, it just says it has to be at the curb by the property. And and it really isn't many. There's a half dozen or so, a dozen of residents who are placing them around the corner from the house, across the street. The cans, you can't put them up behind the curb. You have to be at the curb face, but that's the only limit we have on that right now.
And it
Have
says
they been
near
to-
the house.
Near the house.
Have these residents, have they been advised of this? I assume they would respond that.
When we have this, then we will do an education program. So you're certainly not going to go out and cite them on day one. There will be your can's in the wrong place. You need to move this, and we'll work with them to get them to the right place.
Okay. So I don't know if this should be a part of the requirement, the actual placement of the can requirement, but what I learned from the Burtec driver is if the can is resting against the curb, many times he cannot pick it up. His arm, that clamp arm will not reach it if there's a car parked on either side of the can. And that's why they ask people to put the cans 12 inches or so away from the curb so that arm will be able to reach out and grab it. Because actually they left my can a few times, and so I went out one time there and I caught the guy and I said, "Hey, you left my can." And he said, "Well, let me show you why." Because I couldn't pick it up. So I learned something that day, and now I always put the can away from the curb so he can reach it in case there's cars blocking his way.
Okay.
Further questions? All right. We'll open public comment. Are there any requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. We'll take a recess, and you can amend that. We'll come back, and you'll let us know the new wording, and we'll consider that. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
So we have, the city attorney has some language that he has crafted.
Okay. So the proposed language would be, during the hours for collection, residential containers shall be placed for collection at the curb or right-of-way adjacent to the driveway side of the residence or in the alley directly behind the residence, and shall be accessible for mechanized pickup. Commercial bins shall be accessible to the collector.
All right. Any further comments about that? Any qualms about what he read? Okay. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Has a Burtec representative been involved in crafting any of this?
We've discussed the routes.
Are they satisfied
Yeah,
with?
they're happy with this.
Okay.
Yeah, we've discussed the routes and the pickups with it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And so we have no late entries of public comment, so
No, Madam Mayor.
public comment is closed, and we'll bring it back to council for consideration of a motion and further discussion or deliberation.
Move for approval.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Wilson. We have a second by Councilmember Robles. Is there any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, please vote.
Madam Mayor, before we do, I'll read the title of the ordinance.
Absolutely. Please read the title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the title of the ordinance is as follows: An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, California, amending Section 5.42.170, containers located for collection, of Chapter 5.42, Integrated Waste Management, of Title V, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code, to identify locations for placement of residential waste containers for pickup by waste haulers. And as stated, the revised section 5.42.170 will be as follows. During the hours for collection, residential containers shall be placed for collection at the curb or right-of-way adjacent to the driveway side of the residence or in the alley directly behind the residence and shall be accessible for mechanized pickup. Commercial bins shall be accessible to the collector. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. All right, please vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16, an ordinance of the City of Grand Terrace, California, amending Section 6.04.090, impoundment of animals, of Chapter 6.04, Animal Control, of Title 6, Animals, of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code, which amends the city's animal control regulations pertaining to impoundment of animals. And again, we have City Manager Conrad Bolowich.
All right, so let me go backwards a little bit on this and give some background. The reason we license dogs in the city is primarily to get them vaccinated and to make sure that we can identify where they're at and get them home should they get loose. So first, the vaccination, this rabies is endemic to the area. And not that we have people dropping dead from rabies every day. However, there is a risk from that. And that forces prudent pet owners, it forces people that are responsible for dogs to get those dogs vaccinated as part of the licensing process and to stay current. The other one, as far as being able to locate an animal once he's loose, having a record of where they're at so that we can repatriate them, know where they're at, or just manage the animal should something go wrong as far as them attacking anything or anybody going on. So the licensing is a very important part of the public safety and managing the public safety for the animals in the city and for the city itself. The current code says we have to license the dogs as a pet owner, a responsible pet owner. However, the only remedy we have is to cite you should you choose not to license your dog, which means in this process, you have a dog that is not licensed, is not vaccinated, is a potential threat to the community. We give you a citation. You don't do anything. We come back weeks later. We give you a citation. You don't do anything. We come back weeks later. And we do this over and over several times over the course of months with an unlicensed and unvaccinated animal because we have no ability to do anything beyond issue citations. At some point, then we take this to a nuisance hearing, which we've done with several issues here in the last couple of weeks, three of the 8 were revolving around animal issues. So we take it to a nuisance hearing. The hearing takes months to come through. Assuming we prevail in the hearing, then we have to get the city attorney to go to court to get a warrant for us to go impound the animal. And invariably, at least in my experience, the day before we show up for impoundment, the owner shows up with a vaccination and a license and comes down and gets their license. And we have just spun our wheels for 8 months, 6 months, 4 months of this issue. And we have several animal owners in the city who are essentially scofflaws and not doing this. What we're looking for with this, and many cities in the region have this ability that if there's an unlicensed animal, we have the ability to impound that animal and then take it to the pound. If you choose not to get your animal licensed and vaccinated, we can impound it without going through the citation process, without going through the public hearing, without going through the court warrant. And then for you to get your animal back, the pound will release the animal back after it has been vaccinated and licensed. So we have closed that loop, and we're closing that loop in a fairly immediate manner in a warning, a citation, and then with the threat of impoundment. And we get in my experience, we get a very good response. If it's, we're going to be at your house on Tuesday, we're going to take your dog away, go get your dog licensed and vaccinated, versus we'll be there and we're going to write you just one more ticket, that you may or may not pay in however many months of this cycle we go on. So we're looking for this to provide some teeth so that we can enforce this section of the code, and it is an important piece for the public safety of the community. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bolowich. Questions of staff at this time? Councilmember Robles and then Councilmember Allen.
I was just wondering if this meets the due process rights of the owner. And the second question, would not the animal have to be vaccinated with rabies shot to be co-located in with the other dogs?
So it does meet the due process. Just like as if you don't have your vehicle registered, the police can tow it.
Like a
We're not-
fix-it ticket?
We're not taking it away. We're not taking away your rights. We're impounding it to give it back to you when you've met the requirements that you need to meet. When the animals go into the shelter, they're vaccinated as part of the intake process.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Right. Request to speak on this item will open public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. So I'm not sure I understand it fully, but I know that there were over 400 animals euthanized at the Apple Valley Shelter in the month of June. I saw today that there were 4,000 animals euthanized at the Riverside Shelter since January of 2022. I don't think they need more animals there. Spay-neuter, along with financial distress and hardship since COVID has hit, has made a significant impact on the non-spaying and neutering of animals, dogs, cats. Everybody's overwhelmed right now, and it seems like there should be some cooperation from the city, unless there's a complaint of some sort maybe, but just in general, seizing an animal and taking it to the shelter, it's like $50 a day or something to pay to get it out. I just paid $235 to get some homeless person's dog out of the shelter that got away from them in the Walmart parking lot. And they didn't have any money to get their dog out, so I paid to get it out. So there's circumstances with people. Colton allows 10 animals, I think. We recently went from 2 to 4, which you wouldn't know because that was before you came here. And it seems like all of the rescues, the people that are doing fostering, there's people in Grand Terrace that are breeding, and you're only supposed to have so many litters a year, I think. But there's people that do that in town. In all towns, there's always the excess. But I think it seems like there should be something better to do, like get the drug dealers out of the mobile home park by my house than trying to take people's dogs. I'm not quite sure how to explain myself, but I think it's a little bit extreme personally.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Any other requests to speak during this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment, and it seems that Councilmember Allen is trying to get my attention. So, Councilmember Allen.
No, I had asked to speak earlier, and you said you'd call on me, but you didn't, so I just wanted to...
My apologies.
That's okay. When I would like to ask a couple of questions.
Please do.
Okay. What I was going to ask the city manager, it's sort of linked to what Ms. Forbes was approaching here is, if we're going to force this issue onto people, if the situation for the person is financial, if that's the reason behind their reluctance, are we offering any kind of financial assistance to a pet owner who has that situation? Because like she said, taking the dog to the pound is expensive. We know that. We pay for it. We know how much that is.
So we have a mechanism to deal with people that are having financial hardship on that. The purpose is not to take away people's dogs. I want you to have your dog. We want you to enjoy your dog. We're not changing the limit on the number of dogs. Nobody's going to kick in your door to take your dog away from you, but we are assuming that you're a responsible pet owner. And part of that responsibility is being able to afford to feed them, to take them to the vet, and being able to get them vaccinated, just like your children, to get them vaccinated so that they stay healthy and safe.
Okay, and so my point then is...
If they're unwilling to do that,
yeah,
then it's incumbent upon us to bring them to a safe place, get them vaccinated, and then you can retrieve them when they're vaccinated and licensed.
And so if it is a financial issue with them, then they're not going to retrieve that. Then we're going to end up owning the dog. And we're going to assume that financial responsibility then. That's one of the things that the dog won't go back to its owner then. If we do that. So I'm only saying, that's all. I'm not opposed to what you're doing here. And I really like the idea of putting teeth in some of our resolutions and ordinances that we have on the books, because we've been gone so long without them. And so it's a good start here. But I think Ms. Forbes had a good point in that there may be those situations that we're going to have to take a look at. That's all. That's all.
And there may be, and at some point, and it may sound cold or callous, if you are in such dire financial straits that you cannot get your dog vaccinated, maybe you don't need a dog. That maybe you need to worry about feeding yourself or doing other things, and if you can then afford your dog and take care of your dog properly, then you should have a dog.
Councilmember Wilson.
Let me show the other side of the extreme of personal knowledge. House was abandoned. It just so happens that the cats, in this case, had an opportunity to figure out how to get into the house. And have you ever had a feral cat that you've had to deal with before? Let me tell you, I appreciate the fact that the city is doing this, because it is a job that you don't want whatsoever. And I remember well that after my wife had a long sleeve shirt on and tried to pull those cats out to a point where we could take them over to have them taken care of, or whatever, she was ripped to shreds. And she was shaken so bad sitting out there on the curb. And she's a cat lover and she's a dog lover. So let me tell you, it's a thankless job. So when we're talking about whether somebody should own a cat or own a dog or whatever when they're, indigent, maybe it's a real world assessment in the overall, because I've seen how bad it can get in other instances when you have to deal with it, and it's not pretty. So I'm in favor of this.
Is that a motion?
I'm sorry.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second
Motion.
it.
Approval.
Motion
I'll
and second. Further discussion? Councilmember Robles.
Yeah, I just want to state that my granddaughter recently got a dog, and she had a rabies shot for $5 because they have it for low-cost folks. So this isn't really that difficult.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, please vote. Oh, wait. City Attorney has something to read before we do that. I had it marked too this time. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The title of the ordinance is as follows: an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, California, amending Section 6.04.090, impoundment of animals, of Chapter 6.04, animal control, of Title 6, animals, of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code, which amends the city's animal control regulations pertaining to impoundment of animals. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you for keeping us straight. Please vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 17, street renaming of Terrace Avenue. And we have Luis Guardia, our building official.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Luis Guardia, City Building Official. So tonight, I would like to provide a presentation for proposal to rename one of our streets. This one would be Terrace Avenue, and I'll give some background on it and what we are proposing. So first off, this proposal falls under 2030 vision goals. More specifically, number 4 and 5. Number 4, develop and implement successful partnerships. And number 5, engage in proactive communication with the community and the members of businesses around the area. So background, Terrace Avenue is a public street situated on the west side of the city, located on both north and south of Barton Road. The street is within a commercial zone and has sections that are within the city of Colton. There are other surrounding streets that are mainly used by residents, including Grand Terrace Road, that runs parallel with Terrace Road and often confused by motorists because of the close name resemblance. City staff performed multiple observations of vehicles in the area, and we noticed that there's been a lot of heavy vehicles going through that Terrace Avenue as well as Grand Terrace Road. So as you can see here, it's kind of a little bit hard to see, but I kind of highlighted the area. So this small stretch here is, this is basically Terrace Road. So it's on the north side of Barton and south side of Barton as well. So it continues down here, and this is the Colton side, which actually will be vacated within the city of Colton. And then once it goes through this section here, this is actually Colton, passing Walnut, it's city of Grand Terrace. I believe there's this section here on the railroad side is actually in the jurisdiction of Grand Terrace, so on the west side of the street. Now over here we have Grand Terrace Road, which run parallel to Terrace Avenue. So they're both on Barton Road. Recommendation from staff is to mitigate the pass-through of commercial vehicles over 5 tons in residential streets along Grand Terrace Road. Staff recommends that the City Council rename Terrace Avenue to divert all heavy vehicles to the newly renamed street and restrict truck traffic from using Grand Terrace Road. The renaming process will be in consensus with the City of Colton street renaming guidelines, since we have a portion that the street that's within the City of Colton city limits. Staff would like to present council with 4 recommended names that would be appropriate for renaming and would like for council to select a name so staff can begin the renaming process. So there are a few items that we would like to suggest. Of course, council can always pick any other name. So the names are the following. First name that we thought of and believe was a very nice name is Parsons Avenue. So more specifically, it's in commemoration of Pete Parsons, Grand Terrace volunteer and primary radio announcer for the Grand Terrace radio station. Second one is River Trail Drive. Third one, Commercial Avenue. And fourth one, Old Farm Road. So just a background on Pete Parsons. So Mr. Parsons was a first radio announcer for Grand Terrace Public Radio, which is AM 1640. So radio station first aired on June 30th of 2009. The station was originally envisioned by Vic Benninghausen, whose technical expertise made the station possible. The original primary announcer and script writer was Grand Terrace resident city volunteer Pete Parsons, bringing 30 years of experience to the position. The station is currently licensed by the Federal Communications Commission and is a traveler's aid and information station. Some of the interesting topics include local history, geography, seasonal safety tips, EOC, CERT, information, upcoming local city-initiated, city-sponsored events, and information on nearby day trips, earthquake preparedness, water conservation, and neighborhood watch. Mr. Pete Parsons passed away on July 7, 2019, and his wife Connie Parsons has continued Pete's legacy by continuing to volunteer as the city's primary announcer and scriptwriter. Alternatively, City Council may also select the name not listed above. And fiscal impact, there will be no fiscal impact to the fiscal year 22-23 adopted budget. And that's it. So if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Verdia. Councilmember Allen.
Thanks for that report. I remember meeting Mr. Parsons and watching him write those scripts and make those recordings whenever he and Vic built that little radio station together. It was pretty interesting. They got some real good stories. But my question is, I understand, so from the report, though, that Colton is on board. They'll rename their portion also, whatever we choose?
Yeah, so this will be a consensus with City of Colton and Grand Terrace. However, there is an application, there's a process on their end that they'll need to go through, but whatever name we select, we'll go ahead and propose it, and they'll all go ahead and propose it as well. So there's an adoption process on their end as well.
Oh, okay. And how do you go about getting it changed on a maps, like online, like some people do searches, and things? How do you go about getting that all changed?
So, see.
The name
Mr. City
change
Manager.
goes, sorry about that. The name change goes to the post office, who then updates their Tiger files. And from those Tiger files, it goes to Google Maps and everybody else that generates it. It comes from postal files.
Okay.
And you said, you made the one comment that Colton will work with whatever name we have. There are some limitations. Obviously, the name can't be a street that already exists in Colton. And Colton has some designators, and I forget how it is. Streets go north and south, avenues go east and west, or something like that. So we do have to have that suffix that matches their naming pattern well. So it's not just we're going to pick a name and Colton signs off, but the two cities have wide latitude on what they can agree upon together.
Thank you very much.
And to add to that, so like Mr. Bulowitz said, so kind of like when we get a new street address, we'll go ahead and send it to the post office, and also we'll send it to the agencies we work with, including County Fire, Sheriff's Department, Riverside Highland Water Company, Gas Company, all the utilities will also get a memo or a letter from us as well.
Thank you. Further questions of staff? I have a question. Did staff brainstorm these? Or did you have other input?
So I actually sent an email to all our staff, so I was pleased to get a lot of input from all our staff. They were all interested. They thought it was a great idea. Ultimately, we chose these last four names because they were the top names we used, so it was an exciting project.
Thank you. All right, further questions? All right, we'll open public comment. Any requests to speak on this item?
We received a written request from Mr. Parsons' wife advocating for the name change to Parsons, Avenue, and she asked that it be read into the record. That's okay.
All right, thank you.
Pete Parsons played an instrumental role in the operation of Grand Terrace Radio. In 2009, he became the primary announcer and scriptwriter. He was also a volunteer with the Emergency Operations Center and the editor of the City News Group. He was a Grand Terrace resident for over 40 years. As a Vietnam vet, he was a member of the Army Security Agency. His radio career started in 1969 at KPAS in Banning. He worked for many radio stations in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and for a short time in Agana, Guam for Guam Cable TV. During this time, he was also an instructor for Columbia School of Broadcasting and Los Angeles Broadcasters in LA. Pete's last job was at KFWB All News Radio in Hollywood as a reporter, writer, and news anchor. He retired from there in 2005. Pete was a holder of an FCC first-class radio telephone operator's license, and some of his broadcasting awards were named by Inland Empire magazine as Best Local Radio Newsman. He was awarded 2 Golden Mike Awards, radio news equivalent of an Emmy for the Cerritos Air Disaster, LA Press Club Journalism Award for Excellence, and an Associated Press Certificate of Excellence. And sadly, Pete passed away in 2019, but you can still hear that golden radio voice on AM 1640 Grand Terrace Radio.
Thank you for reading that. All right, Bobby Forbes has a slip, but I know she's not going to be able to bring it down, so Ms. Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. I never met Mr. Parsons, but I think that's a great idea. And please keep the name simple. Since I'm a person that lives in the neighborhood, these truck drivers, they don't read signs. I wonder if they can, I don't know how they get around, but some of them that I talk to when they're lost. But please keep it simple. I think Parsons would be great, or naming it after one of the mayors or someone else. Vic Fenenhausen's name's a little bit too long, I guess. But I think that would be a great idea as opposed to the other names that you have up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Any other requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Is there a motion? And then we'll have further discussion.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to rename the entire street of Terrace Avenue within the city limits of Grand Terrace to Parsons Avenue and authorize the city manager to execute the name change.
I'm going to second that one. I knew Pete Parsons, and I think he did a lot of nice things for the city. So that's my second. All right, further discussion. Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the work that the staff did on this one. These were all good name suggestions. Item 18, we have a report on Grand Terrace Truck Route Ordinance and Traffic Control Devices. Mr. Gardia, you're up again.
All right, this is kind of related to my previous presentation on the renaming of Terrace Avenue. So this is more of a receive and file, so kind of going over the truck route ordinances and traffic control devices that we currently have throughout the city. So this falls under item number 2 of our 2030 vision goals, which is to maintain public safety by investing in critical improvements and infrastructure. So background, article in our municipal code, 10.04.630 of the municipal code identifies the designated truck routes or streets designated by the city council to be used by any vehicles exceeding a maximum gross weight of 10,000 pounds, also known as 5 tons. Designated truck routes are established and designed by the appropriate signs. So currently, the city ordinance has established truck routes on 4 major streets, which is on Barton Road within the city of Grand Terrace limits, Mount Vernon Avenue South, which would be from Barton Road to Main Street, Main Street from the westerly city limits to Mount Vernon, and La Cadena Drive within the city of Grand Terrace limits. Trucks over 5 tons are prohibited to travel over other streets in the city with some exceptions, which include deliveries of goods, any construction materials related to any projects that have a permit on file, public utility vehicles, and emergency vehicles. Staff implemented measures to discourage truck drivers from using local streets by installing truck route signs and striping at appropriate locations, as shown on the attachments. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department will also monitor traffic and issue citations to violators, including any commercial vehicles 5 tons or greater in residential streets who are not exempt. Additionally, Terrace Road is currently in the process of being renamed in order to direct all truck traffic on a commercial road and discourage use on any residential streets, which we have already done just now. And here are some pictures showing some signs that have been set up. So this is on close to the intersection of Terrace Avenue and Walnut. So this is before that intersection. We have a couple signs showing no trucks over 5 tons to make a right, just to go ahead and make it go straight. This is on Maple and Walnut. And this is on the intersection of Barton Road and Grand Terrace Road. So this by the corner of the mobile home park. Same intersection, just more signs that we had set up. This is coming from 11731 Terrace Avenue going south on intersection of Vivienda and Terrace Avenue. So no trucks to make a left. Make that clear that no trucks go to residential areas. And here is a map showing the location of the signs where we had set up for no trucks. So any vehicles over 10,000 pounds. As you can see, we made a significant installation of these signs. So throughout Grand Terrace Road, we want to make sure that truck drivers do not go into these residential areas back here, as well as throughout Terrace Road. And then also for any commercial vehicles that are maybe coming from the north side of Terrace Road, we made it very clear that they must use the truck route to the freeway. Environmental impact, there will be no environmental impact. And that's it. So any questions?
Councilmember Wilson, and then Councilmember Allen. I promise I won't forget you this time. Go ahead.
Just a question on procedure. Do we require anybody that is working under a permit in the city to provide a traffic plan? So for approval by us?
Yeah, so if there's any vehicles, large or commercial vehicles, in this case, I believe over a certain amount of axles, we do require that they get a permit from our Public Works Department because those are, for example, if you see a utility line Edison poles coming in and out, we always require a permit to be issued by Public Works Department because those are considered heavy vehicles.
Okay, so backup question. I see somebody out there digging on our beautiful new street over there in front of Stater Brothers, and, in relation to probably the wing stop and so on. And they're just having a fine time digging little holes over there, and I'm not even sure if they know that they're supposed to enlarge the width of it and all the rest of it, because I didn't see anybody there monitoring it. But my concern is that if they don't have a traffic plan associated with that, then they get to do it kind of the way they want to. And a traffic plan usually means that you go to a traffic engineer, and if they rent the stuff, they'll provide it a lot of times at half price or even maybe as part of the price. And then they have to put that stuff out there exactly the way the city approves that plan. They don't have a plan, they don't do anything, period. And it seems to me it's a better kind of a safeguard to keep us from getting just absolutely beat to death on roads, which is what has happened over the last 40 years. Present company not a part of that, fortunately, but that's the way it's worked.
Yes, so we do require a traffic control plan to be provided, which actually goes through review by our city engineer. So there is review that is done. Also, we do keep it clear to make sure that any trucks, they have restricted hours as well of when they can come in and out. So they can't come in after hours or early mornings or during like a school area during school hours. So we're very strict on that.
And they get some kind of a handout because there's no plan for this kind of cutting. So do they get some kind of a handout on how they have to enlarge the width and, the standard repair?
So I think you're asking not a traffic control plan, but a restoration plan. And
One in the same, basically.
there is a restoration plan too. So they're cutting these small holes now and filling them temporary, and then when they're done, they need to pave back the full width of Barton Road over that segment so that it's all smooth without the death by 1,000 cuts.
The reason why I'm asking is because it seems to me that those are good things to be able to point at when neighbors, start to accumulate on whether or not, trucks are going in roadways that they shouldn't be doing. It's something that we can say, well, this is the plan that these guys agreed to, with their special condition, because not all of them can be handled by, signs all over the place and all kinds of stickers and all kinds of things, because obviously these idiots aren't really paying attention. So the idea would be that if we've got a plan that they've already signed off on, the place that's going to get, really attacked is going to be the people that contract with these folks that are roaming around the town and making trouble. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking that gives us teeth other than, oh, well, I don't know, that's where I think I'm supposed to go. That just doesn't fit. So I think we've gone overboard on trying to accommodate the situation over there in the neighborhood. And I know it's a pain in the neck, but you got to realize what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with the brainiest individuals in the world if they can't read a simple sign, and then drive through your neighborhood at 5 o'clock in the morning and sit there and idle for a while. So anyway, I'm thinking that those plans might help.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. On that little picture you had that showed the location of all that one, I noticed that one of the things that I talked to the city manager and previous city manager over this whole issue is that if we can get the drivers to understand before they get themselves in a position where they can only go forward. And one of those locations is at the bottom of the Mount Vernon slope on the off-ramp of the 215, and they come off that off-ramp, and once they make that curve and head up, they can't turn around and come back, but they're not supposed to be on that road, and there's no signs to tell them that. And once they get to the top, there's no signs to tell them that. And then there's not enough signage either to stop them from going down that slope into Colton from up here. There's one sign faded way back near DeBerry, it's hidden by a tree. And so that is the point. One of the points I'd like to make is there's that traffic coming up and down that slope, because that slope is one of those restricted roads also.
Which leads to your question of? How are you going to enforce this?
Yeah, how are you going to enforce it? That would be a good one.
So I believe that the slope you're talking about is on the north side of Mount Vernon Avenue and Grand Terrace Road, which half of the section would fall with City of Grand Terrace city limits, where the bottom section is in the city of Colton, right off the freeway ramp. So we can definitely, there's signs that are missing, definitely install signs on there. Regards to enforcement, like I believe I mentioned, we'll contact our San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and then make sure that if there's any vehicles that are coming in and out of no truck routes, make sure that they're supposed to go to the routes that are designated as truck routes.
Thanks.
All right, to speak to something that Councilmember Wilson remarks made me think of, and he was referring to the companies that these truck drivers work for. Is there any way that we can cite the company that they work for when they end up in an area that is not the truck route that has been designated?
I don't think so. The only way we could do that is the very specific company that is operating the truck storage facility. If it's their vehicles that are liveried with their logos and paint, because their drivers should be educated on that. But if it's, International Global Express ends up on some kind of a street, we can't, it's the driver, just like we don't write a speeding ticket to the company, it's the driver that gets the ticket. And ultimately, it is the traffic officers that enforce that.
Okay. Further questions? All right. We'll open public comment. Request to speak from Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. I thank you for all the signs. That's great. I'm worried about the median at Grand Terrace Road that's going to cause accidents, the temporary median, if it becomes a real median. So there's about 4 of us ladies in the neighborhood that take photographs of the trucks coming through. I'm the late night person, so I get them in the 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I email them to the city manager. I can't call the sheriff. He's not going to catch them. I can watch. I can say which way they're going. You're not going to catch them. So these signs, so far, they come down what's now Terrace, and they turn right on Walnut, and they come by my house on Burns, which is absurd. They're doing it since the signs are there, too. I'm grateful for the signs and the lights and all the help in trying to get these trucks on track, but it's not just TSG. TSG had a truck going down at 9:20 on Tuesday or Wednesday night to go on the property. That's not okay. So they need to abide by their rules for their CUP, which I don't know the CUP, but my neighbor does, and she reads it. And I take pictures of the trucks, but the deputies are busy. There's only 1 or 2 in town. They're busy doing important things. They can't be chasing these trucks through our neighborhood. So I'm grateful that change is coming. I hope that some of it works. But like Mr. Wilson's saying, the truck drivers just don't really care as long as they get where they're going. And they're stacking on La Cadena to get down to the TSG already. They're not doing it on Barton Road yet or on Terrace, but they're doing it on La Cadena, and that's Colton. So our sheriff probably can't do anything about it. I don't know if they can. Now he's saying no. And Colton PD is not going to come over there to do that and do anything about it. And it's just very frustrating for us in the neighborhood. The trucks are really loud. And when they come through there with their trailers attached, they're bogged down, they're lost, they're trying to figure it out. And my street's really short and kind of dangerous for the trucks. But I'm grateful for what you're trying to do now or what you've already done. And I think changing the name will be helpful once the GPS and everybody gets it fixed. But I don't see how you can possibly cite these truck drivers because you're not going to catch them. And I'm not going to chase them down. I'm not going to help them get out of the neighborhood either anymore. So I'm glad the Sheriff's Department is actually trying to get the speeders on Grand Terrace Road this week. That's been wonderful. They're picking up they're slowing a lot of people down, I guess I should say, and writing citations. That's good. But none of them are truck drivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. All right, any other requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion and further deliberation. I know it's a receive and file, so that's what we're doing, but our city attorney likes it when we have a consensus through vote, so
Okay, I'll make a motion to receive and file.
thank you.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? All right, please vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we have no requests for future agenda items, so we will go to City Council communications, beginning with Councilmember Jeff Allen.
So, since our last meeting, I attended the State of the City address on what was the date? Anyway, I'm not going to report on it because the mayor gave a fabulous report on the state of the city, and I'm going to allow her to report on that report that she gave. It was a great event. There was a lot of some people came, and I was glad to have attended it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Wilson.
I also attended the State of the City, and I enjoy those because it's amazing to me that we didn't have them in the past sometimes, and I really appreciate our current mayor doing this. I also would like to say to staff, thank you for my Christmas tree. And enough said on that one. Also, I would like to get a read on the library parcel or the possible library parcel, where we are with our status. I did introduce it in the State of the State, and I feel an obligation to see if we are at escrow close. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Sylvia Robles. All right, thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Hussey is not with us this evening. And so I have a couple things. One, I will start off with, I'm not going to go into the whole presentation that I gave at the State of the City because I think I spoke for about 30 minutes, and that's a little much for tonight. However, I do want to thank the Lions Club for inviting me to speak at their meeting and then inviting the rest of the city to come and listen, and having the Women's Club co-host with them. It was wonderful to have those two volunteer service organizations come together on a project. And so they had an opportunity to speak and talk about what each of their clubs have done for the city and are doing now. If you want to see a video of it, somebody in the crowd videotaped it, and the Lions Club page on Facebook has that video. You also get to hear from the Women's Club and the Lions Club about what they're doing in the city. So if you'd like to see it, it is out there. Further, I wanted to mention I had the opportunity to meet our sheriff, Shannon Dykes, today. I was at a luncheon where he was speaking, and I really enjoyed hearing his perspective on the county and his law enforcement. He has plans on different ways to address homeless, and I'm interested to see how he ends up implementing some of those. And then also he was talking about some plans he has for looking at efficiencies for changing the way responses are to residential break-ins. And that's generally, you come home, you find out your home has been broken into, and you usually have to wait a long time for the response because it's not as high a priority as some of the more urgent crimes. And so he has some ideas for how he wants to make that a little bit better for those that have been victim of those kind of crimes. So I look forward to hearing and seeing the implementation of those as it goes forward. And then lastly, I do have a history or a Bob Dutton background that I wanted to read in his honor. Senator Robert D. R.C. Bob Dutton, retired, age 71, passed away at home surrounded by family on July 23rd, 2022. Bob was born in 1950 in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he was the first of 4 children born to Ted and Dorothy Gould. Ted Dutton and Dorothy Gould. He is survived by his devoted wife, Andrea Gillian Dutton, of 40 years, and his loving daughter, Kara Ann Dutton. Bob moved to California in 1969. He proudly served in the Army Reserve and was a member of the California Air National Guard and was honorably discharged in 1974. He served for 2 terms as student body president of the Los Angeles Valley College, where he obtained his associate degree, and then received his real estate broker's license from the state of California immediately thereafter, and this was 50 years ago. He became a small business owner when he established a property management and investment firm with his father, Ted Dutton, and they had that business for 10 years. Bob enjoyed movies and butter popcorn, watching the Nebraska Cornhuskers football games, skiing, dancing, entertaining, golfing, hunting, and skeet and trap shooting. He was a great cook. He had a passion for dogs with his Labrador Retrievers. He achieved the AKC National Master Amateur Handler status, but most of all, he enjoyed being at home with his family. Bob participated in community service and local charities throughout his life. He served as chairman and board member for numerous community and civic organizations and was a member of several professional organizations. As a coach and manager for his daughter's Fast Pitch Aces, American Pastime Travel, and the Cucamonga Dodgers travel softball teams. He mentored dozens of players who later received scholarships to attend colleges. One of his mentees once wrote to him, "Thanks for always being there. I think of you as an extra dad with all the extra love and support you gave me and the others." Bob's elected public service spanned over 20 years, where he was elected to serve on the Rancho Cucamonga City Council for 4.5 years before being elected to the State Assembly. He served 8 years in the California State Senate, and as Senator, Bob served on several committees and was the leader of Senate Republican Caucus, Vice Chair of Rules Committee, Vice Chair of the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, and a member of other committees, including Appropriations. And lastly, Bob served as assessor recorder for over 2 million people in San Bernardino County, the largest geographical county in the United States. He initiated and shared the San Bernardino County history segments on social media every Thursday, such as the one we saw at the beginning of the meeting. And all of these have been well received and enjoyed by all of his constituents and beyond. We've truly lost a fine gentleman and a wonderful public service. And so that is why we will be closing in his memory tonight. City Manager, do you have communications for us?
Yes, a couple of things. First, if you noticed, we're doing the roof here on City Hall, so there's a little inconvenience, people getting out and getting in and out of the building. So if you bear with us for a couple of weeks, maybe another 4 weeks, as this comes on and goes off through the construction project, we appreciate that. We had San Bernardino had their rave last weekend. We all enjoyed the show. It was very loud, and I think a lot of people heard what was going on. We, in this process, engaged a sound auditing company who recorded and monitored that sound here in the city. So we should be getting a report back from them later this week as far as not just the sound volume, the bass, and the interference on that. So we should be getting some feedback and then some ability on what we really should be looking on that. And then finally, the Sheriff's Lieutenant has a report of calls and statistics that he'd like to share with you.
Evening, Mayor, council members. How are you this evening? Every month I provide the city manager and staff statistics, and I don't know if you have that slide on there, Conrad, but I have the presser. Okay, there we go. So this is sort of my running tally of just some high-level quality of life issues that we engage in on a regular basis here in the city. So at the end of the year, I'll have a full 12-month summary, and I've been doing that now for a while. So I've got a couple years to look back on and seeing where our stats are, and we're actually doing quite well. Some of the trends that you see there, the blue lines represent the number of stops that we make, but generally speaking, the trend line of activity there at this time of the year always kind of slopes down just a little bit. So as we get into the heavy summer months, we see a little fall off, and that's because a lot of my folks are on vacation and they're at the beach in Hawaii and on these trips that they take. They're not necessarily here conducting all of that extra effort work that they do in the city. So
when they go on vacation, crime drops?
No, I wish it did. But a lot of the effort, a lot of the specialized effort that they engage in goes with them. So not everybody is a traffic guru. Some people are into doing narcotics type stuff and whatnot. So we lose a little bit of expertise during the heavy summer months, but they come back again. So that'll start to creep up again as we get into October, November. There's a trend line which is below that. It's not on this chart here, but it represents the percentage of citations compared to the number of stops that we make, and that is seen to be relatively stable. That line is not sloped. It's not going up. It's not going down. So we are maintaining the percentage of citations that we write in the city compared to the number of stops. So I thought that was sort of an interesting fact to show you. But again, this is sort of a consistent trend that we've seen over the last 2 years or so. One of the issues that we get into in July, of course, is fireworks. And that's this green line right here. We do track it throughout the entire year. There are entries in all of these, but you can see there's 0, 1, 0, 0 until we get into July. This year we had 31 calls for service regarding fireworks. Not surprisingly, over half of those calls occurred on days other than the 4th of July. So that's somewhat normal, but we were a few calls less this year than we were last year. And Mayor, at your address that you made last week, you sort of hinted at some of the activities that you've been seeing in the city and the enforcement of our deputies. And you sort of led folks to the impression that if they see something, they should say something with regards to sort of helping us track down and catch those folks that are out there doing those bad things. And I'm happy to report that that did result in that big drug bust that we had a week and a half or so ago, which was also the result of conversations that the deputies are engaged in with some of the citizens and the residents in the communities that are expressing their concerns over these issues. And after having had that conversation, that arrest and seizure occurred. So the deputies are out there engaging with the community and talking with the residents and listening and taking to heart what they're saying. And good things happen when we do that. So I was really happy to see that. And lastly, I just want to share with you, last year we applied for the OTS grant that is generally awarded in October of every year. And I just recently found out that Grand Terrace was awarded OTS grant money for this year. So we will be putting forth some effort into traffic. It's primarily DUI related, but also saturation patrols, which we were able to do last year. Having this money means that we'll be able to do that on a regular basis throughout the year. It'll be October to September. So we will work with the city and let you know when we plan on doing some of those operations. But I'm happy to report that the money that the city received is equivalent to what Loma Linda receives, and I think we'll put that money to good use. So I just wanted to share that, folks, with you. And if you have any questions about anything that I can address, I will.
Thank you, Lieutenant Lane. All right, thank you. All right, any further wrap up, Mr. City Manager? All right.
That is it. Thank you.
Okay, we do not have a closed session tonight, and so we will adjourn. We're closing in memory of Bob Dutton. Next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk's office. The request will be processed in accordance with council procedures. We are adjourned. Good evening.